Dayatan gade gade para
song gade
Bodhi so Dayatan
gade para song
Bodhi so Dayatan
gade para song
Bodhi so Wayata, Namjana Shicha, Kulunji, Simja Tam, Jayadodo, Sanjay Kumamatono, Tamado, Chigi, Di Chedotak, and Jagawa, Janjuga Sebe, Lapjana, the Tushin, and Namsalang, Malawa Tamado, Langi, Lawala, Shengo, Shemba, Turko, Tola, Tujeshu, and what and Kasu Bawada, and Chikasona, Geshe Bushiwala, Juju Chimbit, and the Teshe Timbi, so what the Kumacha.
So, as usual, we begin by setting our motivation, that motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment by perfecting all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. But of course, to perfect anything, we need to have a good understanding of what it is we are meant to be practicing. And therefore, it's essential that we are able to rely on an unmistaken text, an unmistaken presentation of those trainings. And so it is with this in mind that we are here to listen to some teaching from the Bodhisattva's way of life by the great master Shantideva.
Or getting just a Lamajimala number, Tabjala, Tujimbo, Toba Shaja to my setup. And Ranga Tago, the Tincho, Majing, Simja Tam, Masawa, Maba, you, sons of water, Kumbasha.
Konda.
Reso.
Remason gala cosa Rangi Guba de frozen say de ana cosa
Konda that Namjun Nation channel water, Rangi Nangala and Kapjala Tujimbo, Toma Shaja to set up. And Rangi Tago to attention of Majing, Simja Tanja Masawa, never you, sons of Kumbach, and to be Chivo and Tamba, Tuga only Yigasum set up, Tuga only, and we was a part of member to the Shingdam, the Yeshiva, only the Jaba Chanta, Yeshiva Tomash, and Rangi combated to Tomba Shaja to make it, number Chanta, and only Ongo, Mijiva weekend did it. What did you Kumbach?
So then, to familiarize ourselves too with what is necessary, we begin by visualizing in the space in front of us, in essence, our own guru, in aspect the greatly compassionate and skillful and meansed one of Shakyamuni Buddha, who has one face and two hands. He's seated in the Vata posture with the one hand in the earth touching mudra and the other in the meditative equipoise mudra, holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. He is marked at the crown with an Om, at the throat with an A, and at the heart with a Hung. From the Hung, light rays emanate going out into the pure realms, inviting both the wisdom beings and the empowering deities. They come, the wisdom beings dissolve in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, dissolving into the visualized figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment, some of which overflows at the crown, producing the figure of Akshobhya.
어디래자 아니 다랑게 타고를 맞아 심자 탐자 어디래자 아니 가서데 도바샤자 도베게 아니 고송도가 있는데 점백거는 아니 지금 다외도 이지도 원도 그때 받을 공부하셔 아니 랑게 타고들 진정 진짜 밖에 심자 탐제제 아니 지금 코아치다 제자가 동네 용출할 때는 아니 대달 때는 아니 가서다 동네 나출 미세베 아니 닝제 아니 대화도 된다고 장봐 동아리 제대로 인지를 어디를 제대로 삼았다 아니 되게 대화 탐자다 담바 동아 탐자 좀 딱이 지금 쓰다다 제가 저도 제마도 봐 세보면서 아니 대체님에 누가도 술라도스나 아니 랑게 되는 세트에 라바투베 온거티 심정을 투자 람라 온바도 산자바 인사 왔다 콩고 고마지 토나 아니 제도도 되면은 규제 감도 매버 발언녀와 지다와시 마시마이나 은 제토야 거라미도 안데네 임바 인사 왔다 콩고 고마신 게 지금 섬서 어디를 뭐 디체도 아니다 가서래 아니 준주고 쇼디 얘기 인사 어디를 쳐
And so with this figure, and we see it's also ourselves are surrounded by all kind mother sentient beings who are observing the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha with the triple faith, pure faith, the manifest faith, and the faith of conviction. And that we ourselves also observing all of the suffering sentient beings and are very aware of their suffering and the desire of how wonderful it would be if they could be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May it be the case. And same with their happiness, how wonderful if we could be establish them in happiness and the causes of happiness, and thus reflecting on both compassion and love. And so it's how wonderful it would be if we could free them from suffering and the causes and establish them in the happiness and its causes. May it be the case. So I will see to it that it is the case. Please, Guru Manindra, please bless me so that this may be so. And so we developed this very strong sense of personal responsibility to, on the one hand, remove suffering, on the other hand, to establish happiness. But we see how impossible almost that is to do, even for just one person. But who can do that? Who has the capacity? It is the Guru Buddha that we are visualizing in the space in front. And they are the ones who have that knowledge of the individual's personality, disposition, karmic propensities, etc., in order to be able to make a perfect choice of how to, on the one hand, remove suffering and the other, establish happiness for them. And so it is with this in mind, this determination to attain that state of enlightenment, because I see I must do that in order to be able to benefit all sentient beings perfectly. It is with this in mind that I am here, therefore, to listen to a teaching from the Bodhisattva's way of life, an instruction manual on how to actually attain that state of enlightenment. Shokrang Geju Gapgu Wogi Chiki Liba Ngento Dungel Len Chik Nyongwa Sampi Tesene Ngento Le Matawa.
가서 다 같이 밀리게 뒤는 산지게 땜바도 체 뒤는 태바침비 땜바도 체네 다다데 되네 고급 상고 뒤 예배가들 당고지 배전지 마접지네 배전지 마접지네 자주고 셈 게네 줘발 말랍지네 다들 대바이나 다 되네 년손을 깨바이나 다 니바 년주를 다 마지 깨바이나 아니 왔다 같이 양조 탈이 타야가 딱 같이 지금 문에 지나 저와 매버 소처럼 이번 숨고 열어 당고서 제 왔다 같이 년손을 깨사도 아니 저 가서 다 저기 최주에 안 tungen상 개개의 제도 요마래 아니 다 된대 이번에도 아니 다 소소랑도 그 제토에 걸어 요마래 치 tungen 요마래 난게 tungen 요마래 안 된대 이번에 어디 숨고 열어 다 된대 자 당당 거서 미류된 더 디나네 산지게 땜바데 제 디나네 태바침베 땜바데 제네 아니 자주가 생고 냠네 제 고급 된데 상보 여바데 배전 제마도 바이나 다디 라반에 쇼와 이만 다 되네 신의 년송을 깨봐이나 다 되네 타야 그거 가고 내서 다 되네 니봐 년주 동네를 렌지 영화산데 대세는 년주를 미타에 좀 전에 싸워래 대상 코는 년주는 다는 남들 미주대 대다 된 되는 용신도 되고 신다 되고 신다 rab도 깨서
So we've been arriving at a series of outlines detailing, on the one hand, the great opportunity of attaining a precious human rebirth of leisures and endowments, having met with the Dharma, having met with the Mahayana ideal, and have this urge to generate the mind of enlightenment and so on. But if we fail to carry through with that and really integrate that into our lives, then we may end up in the lower realms again, and that is to be seen as an unmitigated disaster. And so it's kind of here saying this point is talking about if one enters the lower realms and experiences the suffering there one time, and thereby presuming that one then exhausts that karma for that suffering, the conclusion is that it still won't free you from the lower realms. So verse number 22 we begin with. But having experienced merely that rebirth in hell, I shall still not be liberated, for while it is being experienced, other evil will be extensively produced.
다 간제제 년도 계획에 다 레자사 레사네 아니 레산디 년도리게 계산 레디 소소나 아니 되나 타주고서 된데 저와자요 말스 가서 년도를 계산에 계산도 다나 년도를 계야 레디메베 레 심바 뭐요데 아니 년도 된 될라야 레사도 타야바 사기로다 사도 타야바 사 아니 학도도 다 년도 된 되나야 지금 다 가자 저 가서도 세피온도 아니 셀레세바서 쇠다비에 아니 된도 때라 쇠다 엘리지 레지 예바 온도 단에 쇠다에 구급돼 통계에 가고 싶을 왔다 근데 가고 있는데 아니 그 쇠다 모터나 레지 예바 이네 팬도고 말이 된도 이게 레지 예바 이네 그 쇠다는 누가 진짜 마도 이나 아니 년로랑 때문에 자 시울 가고 찾아 왔다 들려 이번 인상 예수 거를 년로 문제를 랭행게 되고대 대삼 코난 용과 주네 다 대용네 아니 되네 타주를 상자인데 말이었어 될래 세네 타와 주라냐 봐이나 되는 년도는 넘버 타와 미주다 다들 되게 아니 년도를 배 타도와 용거 말씀 미주대 안 대다 동에 대 용시뱅은 다 년도를 게 년도 동에 용시뱅 안에 야 니리게다 아니 저거 독송고 온게 아니 년도를 게 주파도 매 사티로와 동네 치마 깨와요. 디바 현다 라도 깨와 제데스타. 뭐든데 딱 가져죠. 너무 깨는 대원의 레슨에 남식도 바자샤네. 양녀서 저 소베치로 시고 오더라. 다 대사 말에 아니 나르양 년소를 깨베게 아니 년소를 깨베 레직 말와 레 셔바 먹고 열봐. 아니 셔바 먹고 열도 아니 년소 달야 될라 쇠땀네. 아니 년소를 못으니 깨 용거래. 아니 년소 때 다가라야 아니 레사도 빼 니리니를 빠도 매 봐사니. 다 된줄을 깨왜 레 패저 다 가져 다 패저 년도 그때 라네 패저 사마도 하래다. 다 땡게 또 버려 지금 중화래마도 셔 코난 원에 다 사마도 와. 로아다 배나 가져 된줄을 깨 수준 남바다 왜 시소 다 그래서 된줄 년도 그때는 그래서 죄도 그래. 다 망부절 때저다 어제 아니 대저걸로다 되잖아. 제소 파제 저거 저 몰랑 좀 삼자 된데게 남주 호라 다 요마르와. 다들 저도 게 가사다 계셔 소베치로서 왔다 된데게 디바 빠도 매 봐졌다. 주주네 아니 디 남세도 바자샤나 다 아니 지금 안다가는 될 녀에게 녀소가 때라 렐라보 가네 아니 녀소를 계고 쇠도 답도 그래. 아니 가보시라 다 가보시라. rewa meeting 사셨다. 시다 잠으로부터 rewa meeting 소리 찾으다. 어디서 뭐였다. 진짜.
And so this situation then, to be in such a fortuitous situation, to have met with the Dharma, met with the Mahayana ideal, have tried to generate the mind of enlightenment, and then failing to enter into the trainings, that and to kind of collect so much negativity that we end up in the lower realms, then it's kind of like we have to understand that it's almost impossible to get it out again. It's extremely difficult. There's almost no hope for one there, because the conditions, the conducive conditions for generating virtue in the lower realms are almost completely, well, they're completely gone, because you have, well, the inner and outer conditions are not there for one to be able to do that. And so it's kind of like when we have this precious human rebirth, we have to see it as the great opportunity that it is, and we must not lose that opportunity. Not only because it says here, as the person asks, look, if I go to the lower realms and I experience the suffering of the karma that I have accumulated to lead me to the lower realms, doesn't that exhaust that karma, and then won't I be liberated from the lower realms after that? And the answer is no, because why? Yes, you are using up the karma, the negative karma, through the experience that the suffering experiences you have in the lower realms. But similarly, it says even as you are, as that is happening, you are accumulating fresh negative karmas, countless negative karmas, and that these are collected even as you are undergoing the suffering of the lower realms. And so this is something that's it's so kind of difficult, makes it so difficult, because even at the end of the kind of duration of that life, then you go through the process of whereby you have the imprints of craving, grasping, and existence awakening a karma to project you into the next life. The likelihood of that being a positive karma that will lead you to a positive rebirth is almost nil. It's extremely unlikely, because you have become so accustomed to not only experiencing the suffering, but being kind of like propelled to engage in new negativities that are fresh and powerful on your mind stream. And so it's very, very difficult to be able to do that. Perhaps just using the power of the object or the power of the basis to lay down some sort of imprints is about the only chance you have in the lower realms. And so kind of like you're dominated by the three poisonous minds at that point as well, that there's this constant disturbance, aggravation in the mind, so that you are kind of like primed also always to be collecting fresh negativities.
그것도 가서 남주는 단계 말이야. 아니 들라 지금 가서도 쇠선 전에 아니 디 아니 최드에 통계를 배주다 미스바 소리처럼다. 아니 너무는 거두이나다. 제대 아니 강에는 거두이나 용도 거 녀송스도 동에긴데 다 제시되래. 아니 동에 중앙에 들라 때는 아니 지금 콘로다 셰단다 미디어바다 다 뭐고 쉬운 거라 들라 때는 다 렌나서 왔어요. 이거보다 나라도 미리대 지탑대도 나라도 지금 삼로 야보스타다 칸나를 관을 삼로스타다 강에 채원도 아니 디 가서 가서래 최주배 튕겨를 배주 당스도 가고 싶지도 와 아니 미 남주 된데에서는 제토고 매바 이나 아니 냥소할 때는 동네에 다가라 연구 요래 아니 디지도 다 최주배 튕겨를 배주 당투서래 다디 땅 마토에 가라 가르치기를 사는 디 아니 무주네 아니 지금 동네에 주tum도 쪽으로 왔다 안데 제가 다 타예그래 좀전 삼도 다다 가고 싶으려도 단단 거서 미르된라 디는 산지게 땜바데체 되게 나네 때 같이 로종게 지금 최 아니 지금 가서래 갈라간자 좀 로종체 이제 지금 가서 탑실에 지금 여다 단도야 내라 보면 도와 강가 다티고 everything okay 잠시만 디레 삼사도 와 아니 강에 잠어도 남자 두고 봐서네 가고 싶도 와 안 맞아 미 남주 이거 아니 산제 그 추게 질랍 도서 하되게 된데라 아니 내가 된데치마다 매바 이나 딱 녀송을 깨네 아니 동네 녀어도 다 최저에 튕겨를 배주 땅 두고 봐 가고 미시 말이다 미시바라 다 된대게 내다 전에 아니 다 무투네 다 간자저 녀송의 주춤의 도대체도 다 그래다 데데데도 다 삼로 약고 쳤다나 다디야 어제 때못 따와 나시자 많이 받자 라야 가서데 코아바레 레뉴게 샤완체레 다다 지 가서데 미르된 타바데 아니 나르게 아니 지게 미르된 거주 수련 남바다에 시제 저서 파제도 도와자 몰란지 마메바 참자와 텐데제 때라다 단에 된저고 리된 타바를 제 내갑지 그 땡켜봐 말해 내갑지로 와 다 되네 세직 되네 우디 가수나 아니 세일은 세바 속에 가봤어야 따나 냥송라 따나 덴둘라 따나 가봤 따나 다가랑 게 제수 자야 돼 가야 소설 누가 요 말해 레 간사 다가랑 제라 다가 레스 하다가 돌아 다 소설 유튜브에 가라 아니 소설 저 삽삽지 제가 이나 왔다 디카들 소설다 탑시 저르마다 줄라 도나 촌에 맞아봐 이나 라원 싸워니네 요 말다 아니 들레제 냥송라 깨봐이나 다 가려 용사래 랑라 자네 먼저 가서다 가서 샘쟁의 쿼터인데 먼저 지금 다들 필름들 속도 와 다들 파다 때문에 란데 깨나 가르쳤어요 대게 와서 그거 매워 된다 말아 그거 딱 가서 그거가 제시하러 다들 우디가 마가 잠레면도 윤이 사요래 다되네 셀레세바 좀 소야 담나 다가랑 깨져고 요바다 아니 못 쳐봐체지 안 대께바나 가리 용사래 아니 못 쳐봐체지 파다 대와 맞아 술을 봐 이래잖아 그러 다다 냥송거 동에 녀한테게 리카셰 아니 미르델 랑네 아니 냥송거 두두 아니 깨대봐 봐도 매워 줘봐 내가 내가 미르델 나가라 소가 요 말어 봐 나 뒤집어지잖아 알아서 미르델 레베 갑라 아니 들라지 랑갈 밤네 아니 저 삼로스 땅 마도 봐 이나 때못 따대봐 소리잖아 디펜도 말다
So like when we read verses like this and prompted to reflect on the lower realms in this way, we must understand that even as a human, even like now when we're in this situation, human being, first world, even when we encounter a small suffering, how difficult it is for us to maintain our kind of like equanimity in that sense. How easily it is for us to be annoyed, and how hard it is for us to just employ the practice of patience at that time. We can see if it's so tricky for us in this situation where we have so many conducive conditions, then what is it going to be like when we're in the lower realms? We're still subject to the mental afflictions. They're always present in cyclic existence. And so the suffering that we will encounter there from the very moment we enter is going to be so unbearable that our minds will be filled constantly with anger and hatred, etc. And that's only going to lead to negativity after negativity after negativity. We have to see it like this. Even a small criticism now can lead us to great disturbance in our own mind. No matter, even though we've met the Dharma, we've been lucky enough to meet with the Mahayana tradition and so on, and we talk about love and compassion and the mind of enlightenment. But when it comes down to it, we can see how difficult it is to have any control over the mind when it's pinched in any way like that. And so here, when we talk about the lower realms, it must be the case that it's almost impossible to get out. It's almost hopeless in a situation like that. There, kind of like we have to see the reasoning of it, don't we? If you're in a situation like that, you have suffering constant. You have no control over what's happening to you. Therefore, your mental afflictions are going to run rife. You're going to collect more and more negativity. This is the reasoning behind it. and that therefore you can conclude how difficult it is to be able to get out of the lower realms, and to be able to to kind of like to do something with your life, to have some sense of control. Even now, like we talk about mind training, having met the Dharma, the Mahayana tradition, how hard it is still, isn't it? How difficult it is still to maintain a sense of mind control, kind of like equanimity and well-being. If we have, problems that we encounter can render all of what we think we have trained in, obsolete. We're kind of like, in a tizzy, in a rage, confused, etc. Just because of a small problem now. It's kind of like, whatever we are capable of doing is down to human intelligence, the blessings of the Buddhas. And that this is really what's keeping us from the lower realms. You have to kind of understand too that it's just one breath. The border between now and lower realms is you inhale, you exhale, and you don't inhale again. That means then your craving, grasping, and existence have come in, have awakened there, projected you into the next rebirth. If you end up in the lower realms, that's the first you'll know about it. That's it. And that's it going to be your kind of like situation for almost eternity. So it's kind of like we have to look on it like this. We have to kind of make sure that we really feel this at a visceral level. It's like too when we're looking at documentaries of animals, looking the way animals behave, how little freedom they have, how much fear there is in any average life there. To say, not just looking at it out there as something irrelevant to us, but to say, if I was reborn into that sort of existence, what would it be like? What is it like then? How tragic that would be, how difficult that would be, how difficult it would be to even imagine, due to the reasoning, how we get out of there, back to a human being's existence where you can actually, distinguish between what's good and bad, right and wrong, make plans about it. So this is the way we should be able to understand these things, that, we have, understand that this is kind of like not just a demonstration for my benefit. It's not just a show out there, a documentary that is external to me, but it's something that I have to start to really consider as a possibility of a rebirth, and to kind of like to really eradicate that possibility. And so really by understanding that here I am in cyclic existence, I'm a human being, I have generated somehow kind of an affinity with the practices like generosity, accumulating virtue. I have faith in the Dharma. I have accumulated certain ethical standards that have created the causes for me to be reborn as a human being now. And that's something that's very, very important. I should really make sure that I see the importance of that, and to be able to build on that, not allow that sort of work to be born again, to be kind of lost again, So that's very, very important. And so when we are looking external to ourselves, we are seeing what it would be like to be born in the lower realms. We have to look in and feel that for ourselves, and to do whatever we can to avoid that. We're going to stand it. I have this human basis. I need to build on that, and never to end up in the lower realms again. So it's really a case of being very, very careful to make sure that one gains the essence of this precious human rebirth that we have. And this means focusing on the causal level. We have to pay attention to what causes we are accumulating. The causal level is the causes that we are doing our best to avoid. So it's at this level. If we're not paying enough attention to what causes we are laying down, then we can very well be accumulating causes to be reborn in the lower realms.
동네 용어도 와. 아니 다 뒤갑라. 아니 two legs 그 차기도 와. two legs 그 차기도 왔다. 다 개치지 가서 유익 감네. 왔다. 로다 먼저 랜드 켈링 것에 데려와. 릭테도 베출레 릭테도 제보 용다데. 아니 대야 녀랭조 현재지겐조. 아니 저 아니 와데 아니 다가네 신 가서데 남이게 되고 뇨와지도 단데 다 된서고 저단도 야고제 심바이나 아니 디신에 디 심바자마데 딜레 녀바이나 아니 오 디마도 트라사민도 텐데지 저단 내절로 텐데지 레샤서 녀바이냐온도 아니 디다 tum바 제바이나 아니 동에 뇨도 아니 대화 망도 줘야지다 고 다시 추니로 와 가서 고 유리 때는 섭다지 섭마도나 제보 호란 영화 걸로 섭다 가야 써요 말보다 섭다 써야 돼 유리 때는 섭다 섭다 유튜브에 가라 아니 가르 상고도 소소 되베 돈다디 영화를 아니 가르치고도 아니 주디가 상와체 미디베 동네 되게 아니 주가리샤 깽가라 되게 하고베 돈에 아니 방답지 와다 디도네 아니 거다 랜데 켈렌 레스가 다 조단 되레지로 와 조단 되레지로 와 어다 랜데 켈렌아도 우리 달에 점마다 다 세리다 통마르도 와
So this being able to really live our lives, paying attention to the causal level of things is so important that if we fail to pay attention to causes and then they ripen into their particular suffering results, then it's what's the point in kind of going, oh, why me, as if something completely unjust has just befallen you. Yet this is your own issue, and it's too late at that point to be able to do much about it. You have to go through the suffering of it. So it's kind of like this, the law of cause and effect is saying, pay attention to the cause. Cause is what's important. Be very careful about what causes you're accumulating and laying down on your own mind stream. So when we talk about the law of cause and effect, we are saying that, yeah, okay, we understand that everything that occurs in accordance with the causes that lay down. We're talking about substantial cause, cooperative conditions, the ripening result, the environmental result, so on. We have an overview of the law of cause and effect. But when we study it, when we assimilate it, then we kind of say, we accept that. That's the way things are. It's not just an understanding of how. It's a reaching a sense of conviction that the law of cause and effect is the natural law. This is the way things are, Everything follows according to the causes that are laid down. Therefore, I need to pay attention to this. It's not just a matter of choice, This is the way things are, and that I must engage in a life that it is lived in harmony with the law of cause and effect. If so, we will see less and less suffering. And that's the thing that comes about, We must be able to kind of say, okay, there are these virtuous causes. They're easily to point out, and I need to set out to accumulate more and more until it becomes a really strong natural habit. And on the other hand, I see these other causes, the cause of non-virtuous actions, negativities. These I must really pinpoint and abandon them at every turn, and so that they never have any sort of say in my behaviors from here on in. And this is the name. This is what, if you have understood the law of cause and effect, if you have conviction in the law of cause and effect, then this is your obligation. This is the way then you must behave.
Yeah, what is that? 지단 데 랜데데 남배 슝네 송고 요르면도 랜데데 강게 송고지도 와 랜데스도 코 미드베 동네다 데베 대와데 아니 조단 거데서 주다 제비가 남차데라 또 뭐요기 내주들 와 다 상계 좀 된 게 아니 콩게 아니 저 뭐유기 내서 아니 데바스티네 아니 데바스네 냠용도 돈에 땡와들마도 렌데데 레다 제비 조다 산제 소 말해 그 내처 로래 남바 이내다 남바 메네다 최켈링 그 연애다 최켈링 그 메네다 미나다 dundu 이나다 냐와 이다 dundu 라마 간데 지바 이나야 대화 되고도는 대회 유 두고야 동가 되고면 동가 유 빵고야 돼 유다 대비 남샤 그 조다가 돈에 그 내처 로래 산제 그 송다마 송 계정 말해
So
대회 유 마두바 이나 수임바 이나야 냐송을 계그래 동네 용그래 대회 유튜버 이나 남바 이미 계좌야 말아 수임바 이나 대회 제보 용그래 어디 가서다 로아페나 매 코나 색바랑시 임바 인사 아니 가리네 색그와 코랑게 랑신 데르와다 왔다 디나시다 어찌게 색바레다스나 아니 색바 차트에 계좌 말와 로안다 추그란시데 레시 샤워와 레시 샤워 이네 지금 레시 샤워레다스나 그 추차도 걸어 추코나게 란시 나가라와 로다 이네 다 산제게 못되는 거라서 마시 받은 못돼 버렸다 못돼 버리면도 아니 수임바 이네 렌데 마수나 최켈레멜레 계좌 요 말이야 수임바 이네 렌데 마수나 동네 용거래 렌데 마수나 이나 아니 디 레컨데 사블라 디 리다 투베 테부 용거래 what that did you good what that did
So also this law of cause and effect we need to understand is not simply in exclusively Buddhist point of view. It's something that is relevant. It applies to everyone and all beings. Like if you don't want suffering, then you have to avoid the suffering causes. If you want happiness, then you have to set out to establish virtuous causes. This is the Buddha talked about the actuality, reality of a situation. So he's deemed the law of cause and effect is a natural law, right? It's not just applicable to Buddhism, to all religions, all those who don't hold any religion, and not just for human beings, but for animals as well. That's the way things are. It applies like that. If you want happiness, then you have to establish causes for happiness. If you want the opposite suffering, then you're going to engage in negativity. And so, kind of like if you accept the law of cause and effect, then you must live by that law of cause and effect. So it's kind of like this applies to whoever. It's the same as saying, the nature of fire is to burn, and that's just what fire does. It's not like we can point to anything and say burn. You need the element of fire there, but once fire is there, then it will perform its natural purpose of burning. So it's kind of the Buddha pointing out the details of the law of cause and effect and so on, and you're recognizing this as the natural law. But it is something that is applicable to all things. It's the natural law that effect will follow cause. So whatever causes you lay down, you have to be very careful about, because their result will be in harmony with that cause.
that the name in that can get Nyanson gets our Yanjo Tai Rawa Kabu Tata Nyansola market, Dina Miluto, Denjogo Little, watch much shut the chair, and Janjuga Semke, and because of the Tajik Payun shit, Ranchen Zeda, and because of the Gun, Shenchen Yundan, and Timbu Shene, and Janjuga Sem Kella, and Bomba Kella, that they got what so but 20 shoes on that what that they got subsub Jene, and Yamu Tushi the Jet catch Moresta, got can't to the Maduna Tapchimere, so can't to the can't to jet to it. And how don't know, King can reach Cheva the King the church of 20 Bejutai, the Comshilla Chan, the Comshilla Java, and Namshina, Kanga can reach Cheva Lambja, Nomu 계획을 녀모 계획에 튕겨라 만들어 왔잖아. 아니 녀모 가서다 지금 매바 차이게 아니 튕겨라 더 왔지. 다 깔리깔리 용도로 봐. 곰나 아니 거기 초가이네 곰배치도 장고 여봐 인사. 아니 남친을 내라달라도 도구로 와.
So here now, when we have avoided rebirth in the lower realms, we have attained a human rebirth. We have met with the Dharma. That we have not just that, but we have met with the Mahayana ideal. We have become introduced to the mind of enlightenment, and we understand the negativities of a self-cherishing attitude and the benefits of the attitude which cherishes others, and we have an affinity with those ideals. We accept the mind of enlightenment. We have a very kind of an understanding of what's there. So it kind of all adds up to a really good bunch of conducive conditions. Therefore, we should recognize that and say, look, this is my best opportunity here, and therefore we need to do our best. And do our best and to not just kind of like as it were, make hay when the sun shines, but we have to also be aware that the nature of life is that we will encounter obstacles and negativities and so on. And there, at that point, we have to get used to being able to transform them onto the Dharma path, and become skillful at being able to turn inconducive conditions into conducive conditions for Dharma. And that is the real skill. And if we can make the habit of that, and to make it become, starts to become automatic for us, and then life will become easier. Our practice of the Dharma will become easier, and the ability to accumulate virtue will become
easier. Priceless
and as Genna said, then life becomes priceless. It really has become that, taking the essence, the absolute priceless life.
That's what Nyambula Beba Jumzella Shisha. What are the name by Inzata? So the budget Sa Yobaina, Sa Debati, and that one Sa Debati Caso Motobachena. Was it on the Labrina Rala Nevata Duche, and the Chela Manta Duche, and the Casada, Takaja, what the nigger Sway, what are the and what the Takaja, what the legend, Takaja to Casola, Takaja. Rang Nomo be Shawan to Juba, Hoba Yiba to Water. To Momato Yina, and Chicasso the church yesterday all that, not the year, and it is yes for the Licky member channel. Church is the Otaka Judge around to rock and social Naza Jovina, and Naza di Casola Taka Judge, Water Baton, and another than Carinu, nobody, and the Masaya, and the Pemba de Saya. And Naza de la Pembe, Amji said, what are the delegate Chequeta catch Muchagua? What I did not say, Ram no more do some Nepot de Wara, Koba Yiba. And what a guy, what the legend, and the job of Lieutenant Patrick some was shooting at the Yina, and the Kyangama Namlaya, Lenya Basavet. Nyabasaba Mambuyor, and it said that Nyabasaba the day Yumbuyor, and they get to go, Shaktom de Majeva Yina, and they la surge Tabayina, Yanson like Kegre, and it Dunga Mutun Yondi among which Yungu Takanja, what are they trying to hear and do some such and Tigua Saba together, and water batona, and the Diviniable Beverly Basata, Diviniable Taten, and Tigua Matata Chiguras, Jumzella she's Jumzella Shisha, Danjo Tomne, Gawa, Mabe, Rangi Ram, and Lua Juas, so Gota Chetters. And it said the Nyongobata, said the Dume Nyongobata. I thought Chimar Nyandu Dume, yes, Dua Jua. That can judge church Chimbish, and then young to be a higher Goguya, and Yamle de Majet, and Chigalaga, or Tanga Chumba Sonsa, Semde Guratum, to win Yonkuba. And Chimar 다들 아니 가서도 다 간제 수요가 왔다나 뒤에 저기 동네기 동아 좋아. 다는 디발 본신 겨와라 베리고 좀 전에 다들 임바 임자 다 가르치고 그랬으나 아니 디과 사바 되겠다 뽕. 아니 사도 디과 마사야 탑시지에 아니 겨와 강 툭툭이 아니 주에게 배전을 그 배전 제고 다 딜레션 탑시 요 말스 좀 전에 넣었어. 왔다 시죠. 그 sabje 시고는 숨고도 어디죠.
So the third a major headline in this set is that pointing out the reasoning why it is correct to really make effort at applying the antidote to negativities and negative mind states when they arise. And this has 4 subheadings because it really points out how easy it is for us to accumulate negativity. And we must be, first of all, not be unrealistic and kind of assume that, we don't engage in that much negativity. But the fact of the matter is that we have to be clear and see things really straight, first of all, and accept that, I'm in cyclic existence. I'm a denizen of cyclic existence. That means I'm prone to all the conditions that can lead to negativities being accumulated, even before I even think about it. And so we have to be aware of that and to recognize, the imagery of the Buddha being as a physician, as a doctor, as the Dharma being a medicine, and really seeing ourselves as the patient. We are in cyclic existence. We are kind of like, we have this disease of the negativities on our mind stream, as well as the propensities of the mental afflictions arising in our minds as well. So that's something that we have to kind of, engage in. And it's even there, like when we talk about, I have a precious human rebirth and I do accept the Dharma. But kind of like we kind of like have this sort of idea that Dharma practice is confined to just a few moments every day or in a particular time. It's not something that needs to be kind of integrated into everything I do. And so we have this kind of delusion going on at the time. So we have to kind of say, look, I am diseased with mental affliction. These are very, very harmful disease I have. A normal doctor, if I went to the doctor with an ailment, they would be recommending, perhaps things that I should eat, things that I should avoid eating, and medicines that I should take. I should have to rely on their medicine, on their prognosis. So as a person in cyclic existence, yes, I have this precious human rebirth, which is excellent, a lovely basis. But also I have to be fully aware that there are a lot of negative situations out there. I have a lot of habituation to engaging in negativity. And if I don't engage in purification practice, then I can't really guarantee that I won't be sent to the lower realms next time around. I cannot allow that to happen. That would be an absolute terrible disaster. And so therefore I must kind of apply and use every possible thing I can to counteract the influence of negativities. And the main thing is to apply the antidotes to those negativities. And so these 4 subheadings then talk about, so if I have attained a rebirth of leisures and endowments, but I don't make effort at virtue, then it's like one of the greatest self-deceptions ever. The second is that if that's the case, then not only am I deceiving myself, but I will have to undergo suffering in this life. The third one, that is, in a future life, I will have to undergo the torment of the lower realms, the suffering torment of the lower realms. And so the fourth one is, therefore, I have to kind of reason that the only sane policy I should take is to, on one hand, abandon the negativities I have done by purifying them, and then really determine not to engage to collect any new negativities. And I must also make effort to engage in virtuous activities. So the first of these was that having attained precious human rebirth, if I fail to engage in make effort at virtue, then it's great self-deception. Verse number 23. So if, when having found leisure such as this, I do not attune myself to what is wholesome, there could be no greater deception, and there could be no greater folly.
하다미 공부할 주바이네 수중기 귤라된데 두고거든 아니 수중기 남바다에 시소 제소 바제누고 도와자 몰란 지방 내가 참저 주바진데 가서 류대 데이트는 두두고 해서도 내가다 타두고 된다자 내값은 원들 하다미 공부하다 세디 동에게 세디 dundu가 좀 주고요 그 사회 통해 아니 저거 보고 동에 되게 그 내값을 깨졌다나 주고요 내값도 개와 치마 변절 하다미 고마두고네 뒤쪽도 그랬어 다 되네 지금 타바 지금 되던 얘기 있네 뒤쪽도 그랬어 다 라신 니가 되다 봐 산재 고마두고 있네 아니 뒤쪽도 그랬어 다 대적을 되는데 두고 그랬어 내가 그 타두고 된 탐제 줍니베 대자외 대전이 봐 주나 다 대자외 다 줍투인 게 니바치게 아니 대적을 되는데 니바 주네서 다 소소게 다게 남가리 개발라 공부 맞잖아 다 된데 가서다 다 저거 계획이 출라 로다까지 디기기 줄라 아니 검지 때는 공부 맞아봐 이나 다 딜레서 다 딜레 랑루바 셰메데스 다 딜레 소소 고호테야 아니 다저 소소 지증 소 차로다 고호테는 랑도라 딜레 모바 셰메 또 셔보 다 문에 전에 랑문에 전에 다 지금 그래서 가리 랭고고 유미 가리 빵고고 유미 좀 맛있는 게 뭔가 딜레 사가지고 요 말했다. 셔봐 오자.
So it's here saying that the leisure that I found in this human rebirth is to be has the capacity to establish a temporary and ultimate benefits, temporary and ultimate purpose. And so temporary here is not just simply a matter of having enough food and drink and accommodation. It refers to the attainment of a fortunate rebirth as a human being or as a celestial being. And so it's kind of saying that it gives you a excellent foundation to be able to move on and to kind of improve your situation, and that to engage in the Dharma, to perfect all the 6 perfections, 4 ways of accumulating disciples, and so on. All of this is available to one as a human being. And saying when we talk about we have kind of like the ability to really isolate the causes of happiness, virtue, and so on, to engage in that the virtuous side of behaviors and of actions, and also it talks about too. It lays the foundation for the ultimate purpose of attaining liberation, the omniscient state of enlightenment. And so it's kind of saying here, if we have all this in our potential, but we fail to fulfill any of that, so by really not making effort at virtue and not making effort to lay down the causes of that happiness, but there is kind of no greater deception, no greater kind of ignorance with regard to what it is we should do and what it is we should avoid doing. And it's kind of saying, pointing this out, it's just really, you have fooled yourself in the biggest way possible.
나 그거 쇼당스라 배는 졸라 직도 니동 지 그거 당에 나 그거 쇼당스 티 공원데 치보레모도 이내 코라기 공원 디가스 레수스나 나 그거 당스 배 로마 지거로 와. 티 가르전에 그 졸라 가시지 계절 와. 티 겨와 치말 가야네 요 말이야. 땡기 디길라 가야네 요 말이야. 다 단다데 가서 내가 타두고 탐제 내가 다 타두고 탐제 줍되게 다 전개 된데 상대에 루덴 디 아니 배주 lok과지 땅와이나 배주 lok과지 땅와이나 땅 문에 전에 다 딜레 경차저 라야 거래 뭐 봐. 딜레 경차저 라야 거래면도 다 문에 전에 지 가서래 문에 전에 다 뭔가 나 소소 칸에다 가 스마트 레고 이거데 스마트 라바 있네 칸에 스마트라는 스마트 차가 말 봐. 다 된데 이제 어느 소소 고가 다데 딜레 나가 매 되겠지 어느 나라도 못 쳐고도 와
So by comparison, for example, in this life, if we spend a few thousand on something, and we obviously see that it's not worth that much at all, that we have been fooled. We feel that, oh, this is terrible. I've been kind of deceived, and we're quite depressed about that. But that's only, a few $1,000s. There's actually no big deal involved there. And it has nothing to do with, what it will do to your ultimate happiness or anything else. But if we kind of like really don't use this basis upon which we can fulfill temporary and ultimate goals, we misuse this opportunity. That's what's saying there could be no greater loss than that, no greater stupidity. It's kind of like this, talking about people who are so smart, kind of materialistically, and yet they kind of like in Dharma terms, they're demonstrating profound ignorance by placing so much effort and emphasis on materialism. And so it's kind of like really important that we kind of make sure that we understand, on the one hand, that the wonderful opportunity that a precious human rebirth offers, but also the tragic loss. It would be no greater if we were to misuse it.
근데 라면 나로 숨고도와 그러나 녀손에 된데게다 가서다 내가 다 타두고 전투게 된적을 루된데 니에다 나라도 달라 된적을 루된 니바네 아니 지금 탐제 김에 고마 토베 니 제바이나 레라루 제바이나 왔다 나라도 된적을 루된 니바데네 탐제 김에 고마 주베 시작을 내라 그랬어. 녀손을 깨타는 된적을 루된 니바데 다가자 다 미시바 소리 차되기도 와. 미시바 차되기도 와.
So it says in the graduated path teachings that it is more difficult to get from the lower realms to a precious human rebirth than it is to get from the position of a precious human rebirth to the omniscient state of enlightenment. So it's actually, by comparison, easier, much easier to get from the basis of a precious human rebirth to the omniscient state of enlightenment than it is to get out of the lower realms to attain a precious human rebirth again.
난 내가 된 어제 다서는 배는 어제 다다 미일류됐다는 삼로그 뉴바시 두가 삼로그 뉴바 남주 중생 삼로 다시 두가 다되네 어제 가는 녀손을 깨봐 이는 어디 다가라 되게 말이 녀손을 류된 그 삼로 땅다데 좀 그래 가 뉴바 요 말이 나는 어제 다다데 가튼 된데 속도와 지우다보다 키다보다 된데게 아니 좀다보다 된도 깨져서 된데 말이 키고라 다 좀으로 와 아까라도 삼로다 지다를 지지도 와 가튼 된데 들 말이 다 키다 된도 코란 지 가서 내 내세지 다 그게 대개도 디 삼로다 too much 용 되게 아니 근데 제도 아니 타바다 탐제 개발 주베다 근데 그 남주도 가 요말해 요말해 다 상보다 근데 민간 거배 온 게다 요구로 와비 아 심제까지 배 상보 배 야라 배 야보들 요구도 와 다들 거라 말 거배 온 거지 요구로 와 고바다 아니 거유다 근데 온 거지 요구로 와 매도 다 이내 랑게 남주도 삼로다 가서 민나시 단다데 삼로도 요말해 다 데레 요말 가서 피게 르델레 사도 르델레도 에네디 아니 가서도 삼로다 투마치 용 되게 와 삼로 투마치 용 되게 와
And so this aspect of being a human being, to have this sense of intelligence, this capacity for reasoning, cannot be underestimated. We can't say, oh, well, I'm in the lower realms. I can endure that for a while. I'll be okay. But no, you in the lower realms, you are completely stripped of that sort of capacity, that intelligence, that ability to reason. And so we're kind of saying we have no capacity there for improvement in the lower realms. So that's the complete difference. As a human being, because of that intelligence, that reasoning, you have this tremendous capacity for improvement. So we sometimes look in the animal world, see, springtime, little birds going around their business and doing this, that, and the other thing, nests and so on.
But carton did a so good. Penguin down, then a carton son, get a shake. For some look what
Garden?
Carton. Temo did a so the carton, sir. Temo did a so good. Temo did a son, and a penguin down, the get a shake it. Coral, oh, Jumza Osmo shake it. Temo did the door, Temo did the Susha. You poo which had a
Oh, cartoon. Oh, sorry.
Cartoon.
Yeah.
Any get a share for some look at it, Migi Samutan Susha.
Lost it.
You do like getting the some
Yeah. Disneyland.
He got India Bushradua.
Yeah. And so again, I was saying, actually, you see on cartoons and in kind of movies like Disney and so on, they also have these kind of like all these animals who apparently are able to speak and understand and come up with great reasoning and so on. And they're kind of presenting the animal life as being like this. But of course, the reality is completely different, isn't it? That the animals, they are kind of like have no possibility of thinking about liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment. They may display, calm and good behaviors out of habituation, but there's no capacity there to kind of improve their situation through reasoning and so on. So it's kind of like we have to understand the reality of the animal realm and to see how they are completely kind of kept down through bedighted ignorance.
Serious there's a matter of check, get about there's a matter of check, and the legend of that, and the sugar nature temperature be over check. And Namne data Maja, that is and said the Dunga, that said the letter, that Namia sort of joke, and Shiga Lagatella, and that can I check this? That in it, Dunga Yongo, and that's our like get it, I get that on the Mongwe Chija Kiluna, and a cheer do it, do you say, Yangachibo Tortus.
And so the second of the subheadings here was that, right, and that's with that attitude also one will have to experience suffering in this life. And verse number 24 says, and if having understood this, I still foolishly continue to be slothful, when the hour of death arrives, tremendous grief will rear its head. And it's pointing out the obvious again, that, even if we have some tools at our disposal for improving our thinking and attitude to life, but we kind of don't consider all of that as so important. and we only have a little kind of connection with the Dharma, then at death, we're really going to meet with a major problem.
And the that Kellen Savachella Taka Kelle and the church to be serious catching with the matter of the ta, what did the Chava Yinata, Shigalaga de la ta, guess we was a get it, Daji, Dibu, Gidu Jago, what the Donata, Dibu, Ponga the Gordruko, what the Tashina, Donem, and then so the Mongbe Wongeta, what Jella Chegos Masha Jova, Mongbe, she. 치진다 길루데스다 가지 젤라치고 젤라치고스다 젤라치고서 길루데 기바 마토라데 카도카도도나 카도카도라다 좀투바자 맞아봐이나 다 남신은 치월랭거로 치워지에 되겠어 아니 년조 조고바시나 왔다 개와데 좀투모서 디바는 망고서 사소서들 대시야데 다디 저기 시야데 아니 양에 좀 당와주로 샤고죠 다르 마소스는 어디 숨고라 어디래
And so therefore, it's kind of like one thing to kind of find, say, oh, I don't accept, future lives and so on. But it's a different question at the time of death is often the case. And it's here, in the case here, like here, we have been informed with regard to the virtues that we, need to accumulate, the negativities that we need to abandon, etc. But due to ignorance, to kind of like a situation where we're beset by procrastination, where we're kind of putting things off constantly. That's a certain aspect of laziness, that we don't do that. We don't, even though we understand, we don't engage in the practice of abandoning negativity and accumulating virtue. Then death comes. All of a sudden, death's there. We have to encounter the reality of having failed to live up to our potential, having understood what it was to do, but not doing it. Can you imagine then, that the tremendous kind of sense of regret that will be there. So kind of like really, that sort of depression will arise at that time of death because you've been putting it off, and now it's too late.
어디로도 다 삼삼마자한테 나랑으로 요에 네가 더 지하를 먼저 최티비 켈레 개왕아제 켈레 아니 도나시다 마젠 치마이나 아니 다 디질레온데 다 중마소스는 로아 중마소스는 다 소소고 수부 내다래 강지가 돈에 아니 맨다 강지 돈에 아니 제가 리젝트네 다 수부 개발련체는 아니 간사선다 시에 잠을 내려온데 때문에 다 레바소스 연구를 왔다 아니 나게 뒤주 친사바디가 야교 용해 요마르와 야교 용해 요마르 다 뒤주도 때문에 다 가자 아니 교바기그레스 다디 장가라도 디장 고서데 지가소를 최 제백갈 녀바도 치와미다바 남진님의 and she was a chimmer of kind of me. What they get the Yana some Yana come. Casana, Chiwa leg to shake to get a marry, Chiwa leg to sure to be gay, Chiwa lebaina, sure to be gay, never charge to Yora. What this shape at on a time took to a never you were the vegetarian. Then he was a Chiwa never the courage was a sure to be a touch here. Namjin Yemen in the shirt under to be a touch here. And 지에서 처음부터 강기장 민배바 인바인자 아니 지제 추서 좋아져 타제지 왔다 소 타주 처부 숨지에게 다디 검리 연구도 와 이검 삼로 당원이나 아니 연구도 그러 와
So this is something that we must be very careful about, that we have met with the Dharma, we've had that good fortune. We even have a little understanding of what it is we need to do. But we can be so kind of like, how do you say, prone to not paying enough attention to what the priorities are. And that, it's quite dangerous that we can put things on the long finger again and again and again. And then suddenly death is upon us. We're on the bed, we're kind of like, we're no longer, the body is not accepting any medicine. It's only a matter of time. It's definite that we're going to die. And we realize, that's the point where we lose our capacities, to be able to do what we should do. So we don't want to be in a situation where, we realize that, oh, time's up. I will not get time again. And then this massive sense of regret comes in when reality hits. I had my chance, I didn't take it, and now it's too late. So we have to really bring the reality of death to the fore as something that's there in our mind by reflecting on the fact that death is definite, that the time of death is indefinite, and that only our spiritual practice will be of any good to us at that time of death. So, and again and again and again and again, we have to bring this kind of reflection to mind. And we have to reflect in the sense that the conclusion to reflecting on the fact that death is definite is to really conclude that now I must engage in spiritual practice. I must start really, taking it seriously. And the conclusion that we must arrive at upon reflecting on the fact that the time of death is indefinite is that I must start now. There's no more putting it on the long finger. I don't know when death is going to come. Therefore, I have to start right now. No more excuses. And then the conclusion that we have to arrive at by reflecting on the fact that only our spiritual practice will stand to us at the time of death is that I must really try to turn everything in my life into Dharma now. Just to exclusively live a Dharma existence as much as I possibly can.
transformation 아니 상내다 대도 가리 용거를 담아서 내 당과 있어 되게 그런가 아니 가서 최주배 통계를 배주 당스 되게 중앙에 최주배 통계를 배주 당 대화 중앙에 최주배 통계를 배주 당딱 근데 중앙에는 아니 사회 통해 권에 대다 지금 체득에 지금 제거에 차서 아니 저거 최주배 통계를 봐 배주 당 수고요 되게 그런가 년종계 되게 그런가 자주가 셈계 대대 그가 가서 돈이 또 셰랍게 어다 딜토라 배주당 심어 지고 그랬어.
And so when we talk, say, the third conclusion is to only practice Dharma from here on in, it doesn't mean that you therefore have to leave everything else aside and to kind of like just put yourself in the cave, as it were. It means that you are transforming your attitude to life such that you are able to induct everything that happens into your Dharma program. So that everything you do, think, and say is in harmony with Dharma principles. Good, whatever arises good, whatever arises bad, when you have happiness, when you have sadness, when you eat, when you drink, whatever you're doing, you are connecting that with the Dharma principles. And that, this is helping you to deepen and make more profound your understanding of renunciation, of the mind of enlightenment self, of the correct view of emptiness. All of this, everything that happens that occurs to you is therefore seen as the causes for your mind to kind of like be prompted into Dharma again.
What are the less jet to buy in? And she was a devil, should support Matomba Yinaya, Matomba Yinaya, so come to the Java into, and that Toya Dula Leon, oh, give me about Jay in some such a good one. Give me about Jay's.
And so therefore, if we can do this, then should even the unharmonious arise for us, then through the power of our habit, our connection with the Dharma will kick in. And at the time of death, for example, we can really say clearly that we have no regrets.
체디 아니 동네 다 맞으면 다 치비시 아니 이내 레로 뭐 제일 저거서도 아니 지원에 거다 가서라다 깨차베 제네 아니 치와라 다 람녀도 두고 열받다 아니 남친의 치와들 레고래 그러다 로 개죽급죽 춘절하고 자가 춘절을 치와들 레고라 다 치와라 다 치와라 아니 대제도 다 가서다 다 레마소스는 기바치 버티기를 숨고도 다 대상에 안에 동네 매바 차려 매 말했어 다 치마 아니 다 치마 아니 년도 동네 아니 동아 좋아지고 그랬어 다 대상 책임하는 아니 치마 년도 동네 동아 좋은 자발이야 미세 속에 유린도 다지 룰라 세죠나 기바 미세 매바베 심도 좋아 미사스
And so it's saying then that if we fail to take the opportunity of what this life of leisure offers us, in this life, but through laziness of one kind or another, we kind of waste that opportunity. And then, like, we can go from being born through life, go year after year after year, where no kind of essential positive change occurs. Then we reach the 80s or 90s when we definitely have to die. We have to meet with death. And it's not like that's when suffering finishes. Saying here, no. After that, you have to take a rebirth. And if you've lived a life like that, where you've wasted the potential you had to deal with negativity and to accumulate virtue, then you may well end up in the lower realms. And so the third of these subheadings says, then the torment of the suffering of the lower realms in future lives. And verse number 25, then if my body blazes for a long time in the unbearable flames of hell, inevitably my mind will be tormented by the fires of unendurable remorse.
Raja sem dunga jwa to de ge dunga de ane ko sem yo yin za dunga ge chwa de yo de dunga yo ju an de mi sa wa mi sa we de do ge ma go ba chang wo da de ge ge wo zhe xing bel zha wa dang an de ge me de xi ma de ko ga so de da xie ba ju de ge ga sa yi ba yin zang xie ba ju de ge ga sa yi ba yin zang ane de 아니 동해게 초용이 요래 동해게 초용도 다 되면서 와서 또 벌써 동해게 초용도 다 같이 지금 그래서 다 강에 채고래 강에 채고라 되면서 와 뒤동지 막고 다 된대 인바 인자 뭐다 녀바도 다 같이 녀바도 다 같이 되게 동해 뭐냐게 아니 나 배주 채고랬어.
So here it's saying that, through having lived a life here of not really doing enough to abandon negativity and accumulate virtue, like we've lived a life of procrastination, not doing enough, then we may well be born in the hell realms and to have to endure the unbearable fires of the hell without respite for a long time. And so this kind of talks about then inevitably my mind will be tormented by the fires of unendurable remorse. And as Scott was saying here, yes, it's not just a kind of like we are in a way, how to say, distance from the actual suffering that is described here. We are actually a sentient beings. We have this consciousness that we will actually feel the pain and feel the horrible suffering, even though like we're completely enveloped in fire in the hell realms, like that's described here. And so it's kind of like that's real kind of pain that we have to feel. And so it's saying to kind of really avoid that. We have to understand that we to the best of our ability, we must remain unstained by negativity and downfall.
semje tamje shane ane rangi ane chige ngonde koba za tutugu mundwa ane ta ane semje ge don kawa tutugu kona yobarwa tutugu kona yobare wata dende yimba za dige de ngozo ta shebe tonde wata kaja 당부 개치슈데 ane kaso de ta kaja je 튼게 상화수는 튼게 상화 좀 마소바나 탑 요마르와 semje ge don jobala ngela don tutuege 튼게 상화 치고르와 튼게 상화치고 고그와 랑 녀소를 깨나 심지어 더 가봐 좀 거라 여바와
So it's like, we may be in a situation where through ignorance, so on, negative habits, we engage in negativity. This happens, but thereafter we must be very prompt to engage in the process of confession and purification. And then resolving not to engage in those negative, and really consciously, vowing not to engage in those particular behaviors again. This is the actual, the way in which this is done. Because if we end up in the lower realms, so here we are now praying, when we take refuge in Bodhicitta, go for refuge and so on, and want to attain enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings. If I myself end up in the lower realms, what about sentient beings? I'm in a situation there where I've really lost the point completely, and I kind of like have lost any sort of basis on which I could really think about benefiting sentient beings, because I can't even look after my own conducive conditions. I've lost them. So we have to understand that in order to really even attempt to benefit all sentient beings, to really work at that with any sort of efficiency, we need conducive conditions, and these are provided in a precious human rebirth situation. We can say, I have this kind of intelligence and so on. I have this energy, power, and potential as a human being, as a precious human rebirth, to do at least to do something for the benefit of sentient beings. So it's kind of recognizing that these conducive conditions are absolutely necessary. So I dare not lose them. Therefore, if I do, I won't have any thought even to benefit sentient beings, because I will be completely inundated with torment and suffering myself.
다 대자 마세 안에 가서도 원두 고마 토에라야 추좀이 개첨부 치우 잡아라. 좋아. 원두 고마 추좀 레셔 매소로 다 원두 고마데 추좀 손에 용고도 와. 추좀라 돌아 맞아 봐이나 원두 고마 톱두고 말아 봐. 좋아.
So first and foremost, we need to care for our ethical conduct. This is primary in sense of not being reborn in the lower realms, but also acts as the basis, isn't it? To be able to aim for the ambition state of enlightenment, the state of liberation, and even to aim for a fortunate rebirth. It must be built upon the basis of ethical conduct. And so it just kind of goes without saying that ethical conduct is absolutely essential.
아니 되네 다 지가서데 지게 타바다 탐색해봐서 시도 아니 셰럽디 개체모 저기도와 셰럽디 개체모 자라 돈이도 배 셰럽디 개체모 저기도와 가서라 먼저 타바 더 맞고한테 가르치고 알았으나 단지 머리 배치고 열어와 뒤에 모두 다음에 도배 셰럽 고도와 다 다음에 도배 셰럽 되네 뿌이다고 주용하라 가르고 고도서는 땡에지 고도와 땡에지면은 다음에 도배 셰럽기 아니 셰럽기 딱 가자 저거 가서래 저 가서래 녀mol라 녀섭 가서대 배 세도 되는 녀바데 제투고 말와 뒤에도 땡에진 고도와 다 땡에진 데네 뿌다고 용하라 수준면은 땡에진 좀 두고면 도와 수준 예바도 고도와
And so to attain liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment, of course, wisdom is really all important. It's extremely important because we talk about, you know, the main obstacle to attaining liberation itself is the ignorance of grasping the true existence of a self-entity. And so it's wisdom that counteracts this. This is the direct antidote to it. And so therefore it's extremely important to cultivate wisdom. And to cultivate an excellent wisdom, it must be built upon meditative concentration. This is so important that we can steady the mind to one pointedness so that it can make a very effective kind of a focus to kind of penetrate into the truth of wisdom. But of course, meditative concentration itself must be built upon sound ethical conduct. Without a sound ethical conduct, we cannot cultivate the attention to be one-pointed like that in that meditative concentration. So you can see again how ethical conduct forms the foundation for all further developments.
수준 비다보데 아니 뇌나시 잘 뇌스로 딱 보트스로 뇌 비다보지 뇌 비다보지 뇌나시 뇌서 루상 뇌 잡스지 뇌서로 잘라 다데 루사 열바 뇌 비다보지 와다데 뇌데 비다보지 와다 수준 비다보지 아니 다다데 땡에젠데 뇌디나 루에 아니면 추소를 추제 그 뇌비다고 되는 추대 대두고 와 뇌비다고 되는 추대 대두고 말와 셰랍디 추 당마 추가 꿰매와 쌍마 다디도 무육이 내서 통한 와
So the imagery is that the ethical conduct is like a really well-made container, or like a vase, a pot that is beautifully well made, so that one can pour in the water of concentration, of meditative concentration, without any leakage or soakage out. It's kind of like really held very beautifully in that pot. And wisdom is the element of the purity and cleanliness of that water in that pot. So this is the way they work together.
근데 그래서 뇌디 개첨부 저거다 뇌디면은 추디 대투고만 도와. 와. 다 데레자 가서데 추dim 매바 있으나 땡에지 개투고 요 말이. 데레도와. 다 데레서 뇌디 개첨부터 추dim데. 아니 땡에지데 요 땡에지데 다 추고 쏟다. 다 추여는 추 당마 삐다 보지면은 추디 배도고 말와. 당마 삐다 보데 아니 시랍데 있잖아. 아니 그 탐제게 아니 우유가 내서 통투에 좀 당마유나.
So that it's very clear how they combine together, because if the pot is not well made, then the water of concentration will leak out. It won't stay. And so we kind of have to have that really well sealed container that is the pure ethical conduct. And likewise with the water of concentration is not in any way enhanced without wisdom, the wisdom that purifies, that makes clean. All of that through its assessment of the lack of true reality of all phenomena.
我的理解，我大概在这个改成不修查这个的话，他的意思，他的这个他这个出进来呀，你加起种八度买吧，银吧银，怎么西点说了，他没给就不出进，但是我说年送了给当，你这个就告诉的，等这个就用的的。到做结果这没给就不出进多的用过的，他没给就不给出进的，要不送完的送多吧银了，你年送了给搞的开住的吧。 搞的开住的吧，等来他就告诉的等来他过这个告诉的他叫他等来这个告诉的他就是电就他就告诉我对旅店就是他讲的，我觉得人家说他会检查了嘛，说那当过的，没给就不出的送嘛多呢，年送了给吧呢，看着他把他们这给吧，看的现在嘛现在判多我们多。 判多我们多，他马上这个多，我到底是当过的给汽水的，没给就不出这么说一下，等来讲了他，等来他这个讲究什么出这的，他上那个出这的拉说吧，他等来搞嘛的，给什么讲过的话，当我现在的没给就不出这的多，我的嘞，
So we can see then how essential good ethical conduct is, and there are, really limitless systems of ethical conduct. But the foundation of them all is the ethical conduct of refraining from the 10 non-virtues. This forms the foundation of the foundation, really, and it's like that which is so essential to closing the door to the lower realms, which of course is so important for us. And that if we really abide by the ethics of refraining from the 10 non-virtues, we can at least guarantee that much. Because if we, we don't abide by the ethics of refraining from the 10 non-virtues, then all talk of liberation on the emission state of enlightenment is just pointless. We have to kind of see that's the case. And when we attain human rebirth based on a good ethical conduct, we can then start building up different more extensive, more profound levels of ethical conduct, such as the vows related to the Bodhisattva vow and the tantric vow, of course. But it all begins with the ethics of refraining from the 10 non-virtues. That's the foundation.
我老说他搞到这个点下午就说，可是俺这里到这了就说。
Okay, sorry, I'm going to leave it there today because I'm a bit busy.
No, okay, sorry.
Sorry about that.
And that nam ju di che de chik chik da what is community what da rang ge dun da set da be and lama tu be ong bo ti lama tu be ong bo kom sha ba cho ro ti what is cha and rang ge ji wo da ngen jong ge sam lo ji sta ko la ge ba chwa ngen jong ge sam lo ji kom and den de ge lo de and rang ge ji wo la ba man 담아 개발체 조소 삼자체 됐어. 아니 지나가 쭉 간데지나 유대나 좀 비자 요만에 딱 파다 잡래. 서와대 공부하시는 데내 예별 로디. 아니 님의 김과지 공부하셔. 아니 심지어 탐제에도 산자 공부하니와 님마도 처음부터 토바치기 설로지고 데데그 dum바데 다외 김과지라 삼로다 반대자가 라마를 먼저 다게 주어배면 저저 간데지 구소도 좀 모두 짜도서 소다 잡아서 담배 가서 빼. 니베 가서 수업 때도 산자 공부마도 뭐 제 소소 손을 가고
And so we bring our minds to the figure of the Guru Maninja Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front. And then we start the preparation for coming up to our crown, creating the necessary seating on our crown by reflecting, first of all, on the notion of renunciation, this kind of feeling of the definite emergence from cyclic existence, and from that spontaneously arises the lotus mandala seat, and reflecting on the lack of any inherent existence, how all phenomena are merely imputed by thought, and that they don't exist in any way, even at the atomical level, that produces the sun disk mandala seat, and the concept of really working to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. That mind of enlightenment produces the moon disk and mandala seat. And then we recite the invocation verse thrice. O glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. Again, at the end of the first, the figure moves from the space in front. At the end of the second, arrives at the pre-prepared seat on our crown. At the end of the third, they are established there until we attain the state of enlightenment, and we acknowledge that by rejoicing in that reality.
연종 샘제 고빈전에 아니 된 삼로 스타전 안 델로데 아니 라니 디 페마타 게제 주소 섬사자 아니 데 다가니 저기 돈이도 베셔라다 삼로 스타 지난 거 추근 위전도 뚜장 요말 서 코다 쳐와 삼로단 뭐 가자 가tâm 데 삼로단 데데 예베 로다가라 아니 님의 경고지를 주소 섬자다 샘제 통제도 산제 고마 니와니도 마다 탐도 토바 지기 삼사 로직게네 데데 그 두바디 아니 다외 김과지를 교소 반대자가 라마를 보자 다게 인가를 빼면 되죠. 가지 전부가 구조 도중 것도 짜도서 내려서는 좀 담요 가서 패. 아선데 니바체 니베 값수 쇼. 아선데 수바체 수베 값도 때도 주나 산제 고마 마도 보다 제도 소소 서를 가고.
And then we, at this point, can offer the 7-limb practice and the mandala practice as well. And again, and once again, we start to process of preparing the lotus, the sun and moon disc mandala seat at our heart center by again reflecting on the renunciation to produce the lotus mandala seat, the short meditation on emptiness, of reaching that point where we are merely negating the object of negation to produce the sun disc mandala seat. And the concept of wanting to attain, of really determining to attain the state of enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings, producing the Moondeska Mandala seat. Again, then to offer the invocation verse thrice, so glorious and precious Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first step, figure moves from the crown down through the crown chakra into the central channel. At the end of the second, arriving at the pre-prepared seat at our heart. At the end of the third, we have the certainty that they will remain until we attain the state of enlightenment, and that's something that we can naturally rejoice in.
얘네다 랑닝이 빼마다게도 많이 남비닝이 내단지 파이자 대도지가 장마와 제가지 카이저스게 아니 되네 네 타고도 아니 가서도 때배상아 다야도 어머니는 마음은 다야도 어머니는 마음은 소아쳤네 제주 자매양가 숭아 어머 알아봐서 나디디도 어머 알아봐서 나디디도 되네 때내가 어머 예다마 해도 다다 마셔만해서 어머 예다마 해도 어머 예다마 해도 마는 셔만에 소아 되네가 인데 숨고다 대 위서 아니 가서다 가서데 라마샤자 생게티 구송 툴레 아니 왜세 빠도 매버터 랑게 집어네 마자 칸디 빠게 아니 배 루게 낭탐제 배 왜세 참네 아니 다가네 제 랑게 토마 매바네 사베 디바타제 빠짱지 따고 줬다 아니 지금 가서라 다가제 저 소아지와 마젠발라 미상와 줘 주요 참아 주종 아제 낙선에서 록달을 줘 다가니시 소다게 도바다 가와 장주스면 라바다 가와 상하게 담지다 가와 파다마다 먹어봐 케보다 로벨라 먹어봐 조사바조랑 군조수는 내베게 레기발을 수바 디가 미게와 다이 기바다 소수기 다이게와 셰게 기발을 제수 이런 거 수바 도나 토리도 답이 계속 얘도 거 소치자바 타자 다 타바다 가서 다 타바다 서 뭐다 얘도 코아다 얘도 거 소저 얘도 거 소치바 타바다 다 답이 계속 타바다 답이 계속 얘도 거 장시 다소 삼자체 나간 저 루그 나자 생기 동네 아니 자롱 틀리 교연 탐자 바 장시 다바 중수 삼자 어디는 공부시
And so then the petals of the lotus fold over and are sealed at the tips by a 5-pronged white semi-vajra. Then the package there is surrounded by the 3 mantras, the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction. and the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination in a clockwise direction. And then from within, the Buddha that we have invited sends out countless rays of light permeating through the petals and indeed permeating through all of our bodies, from the crown to the soles of our feet, and affecting a profound purification of all negativities and obscurations we have accumulated since beginning this time, and dealing with all of the infractions of the ethical conduct of refraining from the 10 non-virtues. So any killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, negativities are purified. All the lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle gossip negativities, and all the negativities of mind of covetousness, malicious intent, and wrong view. Any infractions of the Pratimoksha vows or downfalls related to the Bodhisattva vows, or the breaking of our samayas in the tantric tradition. All negativities accrued through any of those 3 steps of ethical conduct are completely purified. Any disrespect that we have shown to our fathers, our mothers, our gurus, any negativities that we have engaged in ourselves, have had others do, or rejoiced in the doing of, any of the naturally occurring negativities of all that has been proscribed by the Buddha himself. All of these negativities are completely and utterly purified. All the imbalances of our elements, of the channels, winds, and drops, all inconveniences of body, be it disease, illness, and so on, that is causing obstacles to our spiritual practice, and disturbances in the mind, unhappiness in the mind that can do likewise. All of these are completely and utterly nullified, completely eradicated, so that we are left with all of the conducive conditions for engaging in spiritual practice.
다가 이제 뉴도 산제 고바 토발라 아니 백교 치슈데 아니 탐에게 나시 임바자 탐에게 나시 교연 탐제 바찬 다바람 잡바시 차투수 저도 고마셔.
And in particularly that which really obscures us and creates obstacles for us to quickly attain the state of enlightenment, be it that looking at all phenomena even in an ordinary aspect. And so that is kind of like we transform that into being able to look at things in pure aspect from now on.
아니 소소 시도 저 롱데 니랭게 차 라마 샤자스가 꾸들 현지 지그 랑게 루데 라마 샤자스가 꾸라 주수 삼사차.
And then through the combination of my own most subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of the Buddha.
소소 시도 저 셈데 니랭게 차 라마 샤자스가 투들 현지 지금 소소 셈데 라마 샤자스가 투라 주수 삼사차.
And then through the combination of my own most subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha.
랑게 룽아 예순다 아니 라마 샤자스가 룽아 예순고 예메 주수 삼사차 디 대화제 대화 동반 대전 예수미 주수 삼사차.
So now my body, speech, and mind are inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. This brings forth a sense of bliss, which induces voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. And the place I'm in is again transformed of all faults, and is rendered as a completely pure celestial abode.
라마 샤자스게 구소도 뭐 예메 주와디 아니 나라 라시메바 삼로타 아니 디 투갈레 외서 빠도 메버저 심제가 자다냐 뭐 외서 초발할 때는 심제 대다 탄제자 아니 라마 샤자스게 구소도 뭐 예메 주소서 대다 내사게 네게 가서다 네데가 대다 탄제자 아니 네게 교연 탐제 네게 교연 탐제 다네 네게 내서 네게 교연 탐제 다네 아니 저 라마 샤자스게는 다바신도 주소 삼사차.
And then through viewing myself as having any kind of like no separation from an enlightened being, completely inseparable, I send out light rays to all the beings in cyclic existence, and on touching them, they are transformed immediately into enlightened beings, and the place also is transformed of all fault and is transformed into the enlightened abode of Buddhas.
심지어 단자 라마 셔졌으니까 고마로 거봐. 대체도랑이 여와 가리 두바. 대두고 소소의 제가 유대한테 맞고 또 파다 삼래. 고바체. 근데 대화대 대도 니스메 시켜서 삼다차.
This of leading all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment, the virtue that enables this, and I, as the agent of that virtue, completely lack any objective existence and merely imputed by thought. This produces a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and again, I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
보다 심지어 탐지가 심지어 단자 산지가 살아 고바치기 있었다 니만 데릴 거에도 가고.
And that today I fulfill that goal of leading all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment. I rejoice in that. How long?
다 삼로 되네다는 매바 이제 잡에 운에 거나 되네 내려버서 가봐요. 얘네야 다 지금 단다서 가서 데리 쇼게 가서 최대한 뒤 토네 소소가 냠내 제바디 아니 바 묘원유도 되네 아니 용예게 다다 삼로 땅원에 지금 운에 거라 용예게 아니 통계상 개견의 제외 규를 주어서 뭐하죠.
And so, of course, I'm operating at the level of aspiration and imagination here. Of course, one simply doesn't attain these kind of high realizations as easy as that. And yet, I kind of dedicate incredibly sincerely that I will quickly be able to accumulate all conducive conditions and eradicate all inconducive conditions to fulfilling this as a reality, make it manifest for real as quickly as possible. You are Avalokiteshvara, a great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losang Drakpa, at your feet, and make you prosper.
That's what thank you.